What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Michelle Renee from IamMichelleRenee.com. And tonight we are back with a second episode of A Tribe of Dope Black Women. Tonight we will be discussing pregnancy loss and infant loss and awareness as we just recently observed or had the observance day. Oh gosh, I'm tongue-tied. On October 15th, we recently observed the World Awareness Day for pregnancy and infant loss. So tonight, on our panel, we have several, because we always keep it dope. We got several dope Black women on the panel tonight. I'm going to introduce you to the panel, and then I'm going to introduce you to our guest panelists tonight. So we thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you're able to learn, grow, and really be a part of a truly amazing conversation. And share this stream so that we can really impact our community with this. So here we go. What's up? We have Miss Dr. Quia Harris, Counseling Corner with Quia, joining the stream tonight. We have Miss Stephanie Dort Brown of She Blends Natural, our in-house doula, our guest panelist. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
We have Miss CC Rogers from Hamilton Davis Healthcare, Home Care, Mental Health Care, tonight joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, CC.
Hello.
We also have Miss Latoya Sanders, a dynamic, truly dope Black woman, one of our guest panelists for tonight and a survivor. So we are happy to have you, sis. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Miss Lo Messam, our in-house dope photographer and another dope Black woman to the tribe. So thank you for joining us, sis.
Hello.
We have our attorney, Tamika Bennett, on our roster joining us tonight. So thank you so much, Tamika, for joining us. Hey. Last but not least, we have Dr. Nikitra Burse joining us, our public health administrator, who will be giving us some of the statistics and facts around pregnancy loss and infant loss. So we are going to kick it off right away, right now, and really dive right in. We've got some more that are going to be added to the stream. I've got, thank you, coming into the studio, Miss McKee Sykes. Hey, sis, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Doing great, doing great, doing great. We just did our intros. We are getting ready to kick everybody off, and I'm going to take the screen to just Latoya for a moment, and then I'm going to bring you ladies back on, all right?
Okay.
Hey, sis, how are you? Good, good.
Everything is copacetic.
Oh, Siri talking to me. I'm not talking to Siri. I'm not talking to Siri. Would you unmute for me, sis? Unmute for me, Latoya.
There we go. My bad.
Everything is copacetic.
No, I was like,
if you won't get off my phone, anytime I say this, I'm talking to her. I'm so delighted to have you here tonight. And listen, your story, last week I shared your story of being a survivor. And in the sense of survivor, we're talking about surviving pregnancy and infant loss.
Right.
When I shared your story, I knew that it was going to have an impact. Mm-hmm. I did not know it was going to have the impact that it had.
Yeah.
The story was shared well over 100 times. People well over, I think it had a reach of about 16,000 people.
Wow.
No idea that was going to happen, right?
No, right.
But what I've learned is that in people reaching out and talking to me regarding it, and I'm sure you've had some people reach out to you, mm-hmm. You are not alone in your battle.
Right. Yep.
And so one of the things that you and I talked about was how important it is to share your story, because there are so many people afraid to say something. So can you give us just a little bit of why you're kind of shifting into this place of advocacy?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start by saying I never thought that would be my lane. But I don't think that anyone, nobody would choose this path. And it's once you've gone through things, you kind of you look at things differently. And you start to advocate for it, no matter what that is, in life. And so that's just, when Jordan was born, I had no idea what a premature birth was. I thought that a premature birth was maybe a baby born at 32 or 36 weeks. And while it is, I had no idea that babies could be born at 25 weeks, and survive and thrive. And so once you actually get in there and you're living that NICU life, it's a different world, sis. Like literally behind those doors is a completely different world than the world that we live in. And just after seeing and experiencing that, it changes your complete mindset. Like I'll tell people all day, I mean, Jordan changed us for the better. But he has no idea what he did. He changed our outlook on so many things. And then you just start learning more, you start researching more, you start seeing the statistics, you see that this has been happening, that Black women are dying at a disproportionate rate, that babies, are being born premature, especially in Mississippi. And that pushes you to a place of wanting to do something.
Right.
And like I said, I think about that with anything. Like look at the large number of people voting now. People are fed up and they're going to put that into action. And, I've always been, I can't just stand on the sideline and see something going on. So I just decided to jump in the fight, and he gave that to me. So I'm in it now.
And he gave you a fight, sis. Tell them a little bit about what you're doing, just in case they haven't seen the interview or not really sure. If you haven't checked out her interview, please go to IamMichelleRenee.com and check it out. She gives you a full, unedited, unfiltered version of the story. We're only going to tap in for a few minutes of it because we want to make sure that we give a full range of everything as we're tackling why this is so important in our community. But tell them what is the work that you're doing as a result of what you experienced?
Yeah, so basically, and don't get me wrong, our family, our friends support, the doctors, nurses, everyone was great at UMC. I mean, we couldn't have got through this without them. But one thing I realized, like, there was a lactation room, and that's kind of where all the women or all the moms, congregated. And we would just kind of share our experiences there. Usually those are tears, but, just kind of talk about what's going on. And I realized like, wow, we really don't have anybody to talk to, like, unless you just make friends in there. And so a little bit after Jordan passed away, I contacted the medical director and, a few administrators at the NICU. And I had an idea of creating some type of support group. I didn't really know what that looked like. So I just kind of started looking at best practices at other NICUs and kind of designing the framework from there. They were completely on board. It was something that hadn't been done. And there was a need for it. So basically pre-COVID, we meet once a month in person. We designed a journal. We got funding from the State Department of Health for a journal for parents. That idea came from, I have a million journals that I would keep, everything, all of Jordan's information in those journals. And so when he passed away, his doctors and nurses brought me a journal to the funeral, and they all wrote notes in it kind of, about him and how he impacted them. So journals, I love journals. But it's a good way for, parents to get their feelings out during that time. We also do a monthly newsletter. And, just the way it may have a crossword puzzle in it, it may have a few terms in it, and then it may have, some important information, but really just a way to keep parents, informed while they're bedside, to take their mind off of, a few things. And then if there's new families in that maybe need gift baskets, things of those sorts, then that's what we were created to do. Just really be a support for the families there.
That's really, really powerful. I'm going to bring some people on screen for a moment. We just had one of our resident pediatricians to check in, Dr. Erica Davis, who's joining the tribe. I'm going to bring on your sister, Dr. Burse. I'm going to bring on our doula, Stephanie Dort Brown, and I'm going to bring on Dr. Davis to kind of have a conversation around what happens when we're in this space. So we know your story. We know that Jordan was with us for 8 months, and He was a powerful, fighting little man. Okay. He fought his way through his journey. But you touched on something that's really, really profound, and it's something that we have to think about, and it's the reason for us having this conversation. This happens disproportionately to Black women. We're needing to get to the understanding of why this is so. Dr. Burse, can you give us a little bit about, as far as statistically, what the statistics are, and what are some of the leading reasons for why we say, or why scientists or researchers say that this is happening to us?
Yeah, so y'all can probably hear the little ones in the background, but so just looking at Black women, of course, even when we look at maternal death, Black women are like 3 to 4 times more likely to die from birth-related complications than white women. And then when you look at preeclampsia, which was Toy's situation, Black women are at much higher risk for preeclampsia. And so, like, some of those things keep going unexplained. Well, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's going on. But at the heart of it, and Dr. Davis, you may be able to chime in from a public health perspective, it is racism, and the healthcare system was not designed for people that look like us. So though we have great physicians like Dr. Davis and others who work in that system, they are actively working in a system that was not created for people that look like us. And so when you read studies about prescribing practices for physicians, when they say, well, Black people have thicker skin, so they prescribe medications differently. And when you look at things like, well, I said my pain level was a 10 and they looked at it as a 5. And so there's this thought that Black women are strong, or, much stronger. But then when you look at even history, all of this dates back to our first steps on this American soil. We never had autonomy of our bodies, put up on a slave auction block. Reproductive rights taken from us, being wet nurses, all of these things. And we don't often look at those as connecting to what we see today. And they do. They really do. I always say all of this has a generational impact. When we look at, like, our aunt that died in 2003, so when I got pregnant, I started thinking about that. When Toy got pregnant, she started thinking about that. And even that just generational impact of that, like just knowing that, okay, my aunt died and we don't really know what happened. It was just like a lot of things that we just didn't know at that time. So it makes you scared. And so then there's this concept called weathering. So all of those social stresses and, pressures on us just living as Black women, substandard housing, low wages, access to insurance, all of those things play out physically. And so if I'm 35 years old, I'm already what you call advanced maternal age, right? And so then, when you take all the social pressures of just being a Black woman in the United States, that may make my body 45 years old, which definitely increases my risk. And so when you think about all those things, I know Toy was younger age, but right now we just can't even explain preeclampsia in Black women, but we know that they're at a higher risk. So I think it's very complicated on one end, but on the other end, it's not. We know that structural systemic racism plays a major role in all these things. And though Toy had great care, the advocacy that had to take place on our part. I mean, even when she went into the hospital that night, I waited at UMC at 3 a.m. until she got there, and I stood by her bedside and was like this close in the doctor's face trying to, talk to them about everything that was going on. And so, but I knew that in that moment, I was the only person there that could be a true advocate for her when she couldn't advocate for herself. And so that's another thing, like just being that advocate, even then, you still don't know, what will happen. So I know I went all around the circle, but I think it's complicated and uncomplicated. It just depends on how we want to fix it.
That touched on a lot, Nikitra. Thank you so much for sharing that piece, because we know it is a lot that I generationally, like that's what really hit my eyes, kind of got big when you said generationally, because we think about our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunts, our great aunts, and the experiences that they had. And we imagine ourselves to be healthy, right? Or to be doing practices that makes us healthier, yet we still run into some of the same complications or some of the same issues. Some of us go full term and still have those issues. And you're wondering, okay, what is going on to be able to experience these things, and how can we do something about it? Like, it's great to have a phenomenal advocate in the healthcare system if you got it, or to be able to call on somebody and say, hey, sis, I need to know, they just told me this and I don't understand. Help me understand. But we're trying to get to the root of like, what is the real problem? Tamika, I brought her on and McKee on to share their personal experiences with pregnancies, with loss, with complications, and some of the things. McKee, would you share with us what your experience has been?
Well, hi everyone. My experience with pregnancy is been a struggle for me and my husband. We got pregnant back in 2011. Got pregnant fairly quickly, and we suffered a miscarriage at 6 weeks, and we have no clue as to why that happened. You know, our doctor really can't explain it. And so we have struggled to get pregnant since that point, having to go through IVF and the wear and tear on your body. Just coming from a mental perspective, it's a very lonely journey. You're embarrassed by it. You feel ashamed because you feel like there's something wrong with you. You're questioning everything about yourself in terms of me being a woman. You know, what's wrong with me? Why can't I produce life? And I think in the African American community, miscarriage and pregnancy loss and losing a child is such a taboo because we don't talk about it. We have to suffer in silence. We may be able to share it with a couple of friends or loved ones, but we don't really get to share what it is that we're going through and grieve publicly, not publicly, but be able to confide in people, because we're raised to be strong. We're raised to be tough, and you know, you pray about it. You don't show your vulnerability and stuff like that. So I think for us, for me and my husband, it has definitely been a struggle for us to remain positive on this journey, because it's a difficult one and it's a lonely, isolating experience. So, you know, my heart goes out to you, Natoya. I am not aware of your story, but I am so glad that you are creating resources where people like me and other women who have suffered some type of pregnancy loss have an outlet, have a place to share our experiences and not feel judged and not feel like we are being a burden to, you know, someone else. So I really appreciate, you know, everything that you've done so far.
I really think that we are in a space where we have to become comfortable with talking about it. And I know it seems weird and I know it's hard, but I can remember vividly a friend coming to me in distress because they'd suffered a miscarriage. And I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to say. And they were pretty far along. And I had no idea like what to do or how to act or how to console my friend or how to like be a good person, for a lack of a better word. Like I didn't know what to do. And it's hard because for our community to experience it as often as we do and to not talk about it, it makes it really hard. And so I want to make sure that we understand that it does not lessen your womanhood to struggle to conceive. Like it does not make you less of a woman, for one. It's really hard to process being able to go through that journey. And we've seen people, I've experienced with friends who have done, you know, the IVF, and, you know, it's a process that takes you through a lot physically, and it takes you through a lot emotionally, right?
Most
And so
definitely.
to know that you're on this journey and you don't know where it's going to lead, it makes it hard. And I was talking to Nikitra literally last night, I think we were talking, and the hardest part for me was the mom guilt that I experienced when my friend lost her baby, because we were pregnant at the same time. And it's hard because I want to be joyful on this side, but at the same time, I'm still feeling this pain and this remorse, because I'm going, it's not fair. Like, how does this happen? How do the choices get made or whatever? And I know when we think about that, we don't want to say putting yourself in another person's shoes, but the only way we can experience the empathy that needs to go there is by putting ourselves in other people's shoes. And I even had the space when I experienced pregnancy loss to where I was confused, and immediately I was like, it's all my not doing the right thing and sinning, going this, and I'm getting paid back, and I'm never going to have a baby, and it's never going to go right, and all these different things, which was creating even more stress. So now you're dealing with all these different things. But even in that, you get to the place where you are able to conceive, and then you have a baby, and then the baby doesn't get to come home. And we've been on that in our family. We've been on that end too. Or when we brought the baby home, it was in a box to be buried. And that's hard. So you're having these conversations. And the one thing that I know, Natoya, specifically with you weren't in this journey by yourself, because you have a husband, you have Joey, you have your family, you have your sister. And the process it affected you, of course, because you're Jordan's mom and you carry them. But right. Can you unpack just a little bit what it was like to have this conversation, and then to, as a family, try to go through the healing process?
Yeah. So I think it's very important to note that spouses grieve differently. And I think that that's completely fine. You know, next week is the anniversary of Jordan's death date. And like, I feel this entire week, really this entire month, I feel complete tension, like anxiety, wondering why I'm so tired. Just, it's always leading up until, you know, it's worse. And I'll never forget when another child that was in the NICU with Jordan, when he passed away, his mom told me that she couldn't listen to any songs that was played at his funeral, anything, you know, of that sort. And she said, my husband wants to listen to it every day, and it drives me nuts, because for him, it brought him closer, you know, it brought him closure. And for her, it just brought back bad memories. And I didn't really understand at the time, because Jordan was still with us. And a few months later, I completely realized that, because to this day, I don't listen to any songs that I listened to while he was in the hospital. Like, while I was praying, I don't listen to any of those. I don't listen to anything that was played at his funeral. Excuse me. I just, you know, it's like I said, we handle things differently. And it's good when you have, you know, family that you can lean on. And, you know, even though, like, I have a very supportive family, sometimes Keitra may even say, you know, I'm praying because I really don't know what to say, or I don't know, you know, what to do. And my mom too, I love her to death. My mom wants to take the pain away, you know.
Of course, that's what moms do.
That's what mamas do. Yeah. And I tell her, like, it's not yours to take away, you know, and I know that's what we want to do, but it's not yours. And I think that when you're grieving, it's just important for spouses and families to grieve together, but also give each individual their own space as to how they want to grieve. Because somebody told me a statistic one time about how many couples will divorce after they lose a child. And I said, you know, we're not even going there.
Right.
Like that's not our concern, and I'm thankful that Joey gives me that when I need it, and sometimes he would say, well, it's gonna get better, things are gonna happen. I'm like, when? And he would one day he said, well, what you want me to tell you, that it's not gonna get better? And I was like, well, I mean, that's what it feels like, but it's just important that you, just like when you go somewhere, you read the room. It's important that you read each other and that you read your spouse. And, when you're in that situation, you're together every day, you'll know what that person needs. And for me, it was a lot of guilt, because at one point I thought, this man gonna get tired of my crying. He just gonna pack up and leave, and I'm like, I mean, if he do, but I, no, but I mean, you get in your own head.
Yeah.
And you get
the thing about it, Toy, we get in our own head about everything though. And that's the thing with grief of any sort. We get in our own head. And I think one of the things that we experience is that we have to find a way to acknowledge it. And you and I were talking about it. You acknowledge it, and people have to accept that you're not okay sometimes.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is like, like I may be crying and I may be having a bad day. I promise I am okay. I may not be okay in this moment. I'm going to be okay. I just have to get through this moment. And it's nothing you can say or do to fix that, but you can be there and you can give me that moment and just be supportive of that, because nobody can bring our babies back. Right. So I have to sit with that and just sort through it. And I don't know, do I have it figured out? I mean, it'll be 5 years. No, I really don't have it figured out. And so I definitely don't expect anybody else to have the answers for it. It's just a process.
Absolutely. I want to shift for a moment to like just the pregnancy piece with going through some of the complications, where we talked with Dr. Burst about how Black women are experiencing these things at much higher rates than everybody else. And I know, Tamika, you had for the pregnancies that you had were something that our doctor, we shared the same doctor for years, had never seen or experienced before. So it was this learning curve around what to do. I feel like he provided the best care possible, but can you give us just like a little bit of what happened there?
Well, I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravium, which is basically extreme morning sickness. With my first pregnancy, I basically couldn't hold down anything, not even water. I was sick all day long. I lost probably about 50 pounds. Just really sick as a dog, pretty much. And so when I first began to have symptoms of sickness, he was my new doctor. So he, it's a learning curve of learning your patient too. So he kind of, was like, oh, she being dramatic. Cause I'm like, look, dude, I can't hold down water. I need help. He would be like, his favorite line to me, even I've had 2 other children since then, is that it's always fun getting pregnant, but it's not fun while you are pregnant. He says it to me all the time. But it was just awful. And it took that first pregnancy and several hospitalizations. I ended up having a PICC line. I mean, so many different things because I couldn't hold down anything. And that experience, pretty much showed him how to deal with me as I had subsequent pregnancies. But I ended up having preeclampsia. That pregnancy was just awful. I had everything that was in a textbook that they say, a certain segment of the population, 1 out of whatever I would get it. I got the rash. I got the hyperemesis. I had the hypertension. Well, I had hypertension because that was the preeclampsia and the swelling. And I remember when I was having my first baby, my grandma, everybody was at the hospital at that time. And they were just like, you're the closest to death when you're having a baby. And I never realized how close I really was. I was at stroke level and I didn't know because, I just wasn't educated until after you have the first one, then you kind of know a little better. And then they teach you a little bit better as to how to be more preventative towards it happening again. But yes, it's scary, when you don't know what's going on and you there's nothing that they really can do to help you,
Right.
you know, while you're pregnant, other than give you some nutrition and tell you, you know, let's boost your morale and keep going. It's gonna be all right. But that's pretty much all they could do.
Right. And just understanding the aspect of here you are. And when we go to the doctors, we're going to the doctor because they're the expert. And we're like, hey, I'm not the expert. I'm just a human trying to do something. I don't even know what I'm doing right here. Can you help me on it? So when you get there and they're like, I don't know what this is. I've never seen this before. You're like, what? Hold on now. You get confused. So it's crazy to have that. Cece, you had an experience that you wanted to share.
Yes. Hi, how are you all?
Doing good.
I have a 6-month-old, and with my pregnancy this past year, it was probably the roughest experience that I've had that I can remember. I got up probably around my 6th month to about 230 some odd pounds. I'm 5'11". So, you know, I was gaining weight well. However, in the mix of me being pregnant, I just experienced life. And I think that that's something that you really have to prepare yourself for mentally. I deal with mental health. There's some other mental health people on here on the panel, but it's hard as a woman to put yourself first. And even though that you have children, you put them first naturally, but it's still, when you're pregnant, it's hard to put yourself first before any and everything. So within me being pregnant, I lost my dad before pregnancy. So I was dealing with a lot of stress. I only have one sibling. So I had financial obligations. And I talk about that often as well, about having life insurance. My dad did not have any life insurance, did not know that he didn't handle his business, but his business turned into my brother and my business. So that was a financial hardship that I took on unexpectedly. Not only that, but I lost my dad unexpectedly on my birthday. And my dad's birthday and my birthday is a week apart in February. So handling the business, not grieving until months had passed, had family issues and people issues, social issues, and being pregnant, body being tired, being mentally exhausted, going to the doctor, and every time that I was getting the sonograms, not fully being able to see my baby because of the fact that my body was tired and I was dehydrated. So I was getting constant, reminders and reprimands saying, hey, we're going to have to hospitalize you. If you don't slow down, you need to start drinking a lot of water. So it was like, okay, well, I'm trying to eat, but really I wasn't able to absorb any vitamins or nutrients because I was still working nonstop. I was still doing everything that I was doing prior to being pregnant, and not feeling so tired and bogged down to where it was a mental stop for me, if that makes sense. It wasn't something that was a mental stop. But long story short, my child was born weeks early because of the fact that I lost about 35 pounds within my 7th to 9th month. So like people now, they see me on Facebook or they see me out and they're like, oh, you look good. You done lost weight. And I'm like, well, it wasn't because I was trying, it was just my body, the response of what was happening to me. And then, even people that's close to you, they don't really take sometimes you being pregnant as serious. They just think it's the stereotype and it's the stigma that's attached to it. Oh, you just pregnant, you just hormonal, when your cycle come on, how you just stay, it's all of those things that kind of are attached to a woman. And then of course, this is a panel of Black women. So we always have that stigma of being moody or having an attitude or trying to put somebody in place or in check, all of that. But really you just trying to make it. and life happens to you, and people don't really respect sometimes you as being a woman of life happening to you, to sometimes give you that space to just say, well, let me just give her some time. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, that I had a cry out. And I had one on Facebook. I shame the devil. I had one, but I felt like I felt like that I verbally told everybody in my niche of how I was feeling. And I felt like, like they say, you can only take accountability for self. I felt like nobody was getting it. Nobody was understanding to give me a break. And I was in 2 car accidents while being pregnant. I got hit by an 18-wheeler, sideswiped, lifted my car completely off the ground. The hubcaps with the claw, the spikes, lifted my car completely up. And I was on 2 wheels, and I held on so tight and jerked away. My car slammed down, and I had 2 other lanes. I didn't even look for traffic. I just immediately went over to the side of the road. And when the police officers came, they were saying, girl, and this was in Pearl, Mississippi. They was like, girl, you lucky to be alive, because that truck, that 18-wheeler, if you would have went under there, you would be gone. Yeah. And because of the stress of the first accident and my dad not being here for Thanksgiving, I said, well, look, I just need to get away. And we all know when we just want to travel. We just want to get somewhere in a hotel room. We want to go to sleep. We can get on the beach. We can go to other family members' house and, just have that break. So on the way to Houston, the day before Thanksgiving, my daughter and I was T-boned by a couple. And the rental car was totaled. And I was like 10 minutes outside of Texas. And so that put a lot of stress on my body as well. So when the baby was born, she had less than 5% body fat. And right now she has an umbilical hernia because the food and the nutrients was trying so hard to get to her, but it was a strain. And right now she's still tiny as far as to be 6 months, but she's healthy. Thank God she is healthy. But the strain that it put on her, the strain that it put on me, the strain of being a mom now, of still trying to cope and deal with everything, I think a lot of people, they just don't get it. They don't. They're out of touch with reality of how exhausting and how tiring it is on your body, mind, body, and soul. So, hats off to everybody. Everybody that has experienced any type of difficulties, trauma, all of that. Much love to you, understanding the whole 9, because it takes a lot. But that's my little story that I wanted to share, because I am very familiar, because it was getting as serious, and I knew it. I knew that I was sick. I knew I was.
That's a lot, CC. We love you. We appreciate you sharing that. And just to think about the amount of trauma that you experienced in that time, from grieving and losing your dad to all this different stuff. And people don't realize that, like, all of that plays on you. And so
it does. And the thing about it, God provides.
Yes, he does.
I don't know, everybody may not be spiritual, but God took something so precious to me. My dad, I'm a daddy's girl at heart. And when he died on my birthday, unexpectedly, I begged God to just be that little mustard seed of faith, to keep him here with me. God saw fit otherwise. And you can't lean on your own understanding. You got to give it all understanding to him. So God knew what he was doing. And a couple months later, I was pregnant. And now that same joy that I have had for my father, I now have it in that child. So even though that God taketh away from you, He's going to provide something much greater later. So you stay strong and you hold on, because God got it. He got it. It don't seem that way. It does not seem that way. If I didn't have my own children and my husband and if I didn't have my children now, I'm okay with God's plan and purpose. And I know what my purpose is here on earth. It's not to impress people. It's not to do what other people want me to do. It's to do what God intended for me to do. So if I have done my mission and God wanted to call me home to be with my dad, hey, let's go. I'm ready to see him. I'm ready to meet God and see my dad. So that's how my mental and that's how my heart is. But it's God got you. God got all of us. So when death occurs, it's a plan and purpose in it. And the only thing that it does when your heart is hurting and aching so bad, and you don't have, it don't matter if you was a millionaire, a billionaire, a trillionaire, you still can't pay for that person to be replaced, to be by your side. But God will be able to bring you closer to him and draw you nearer to where your heart and your mind should be. So hold on.
Thank you, CC. We'll have to pass the collection plate on you. Where my bowl at? I need the bowl. We get to this place where it does feel like you can't go any further, like you can't do anything else. And I believe wholeheartedly what you said about, God having something for you and a purpose in your pain. I believe every pain has a purpose. And we don't always understand. We never understand it when we're in it. I haven't met a person yet that in the midst of their pain, in the midst of their struggle, in the midst of what they're going through, they're like, I know what my purpose is from this, and I've got it, and I'm ready to move. No, it don't work like that. It's usually on the back end of it that you're able to say, God, I don't like the way you did that. I'm glad we cool, but I really don't like how you did that at all. But I see your purpose, and I respect you because you're my father, but I still don't like how you played that card. I don't like that. And I can say that. Me and God, cool. We tight. I'm all the time being like, I don't like how you did that to me. I don't like that. It's just like a child talking to their mom saying, you know what? I ain't like when you whoop me. I don't like it. I know Chan and Coop tell you that all the time, Keisha. I don't like that. I do not like that. Don't do that to me. But
they don't care. They don't care.
They don't care. But when they get older, they're going to appreciate it. But right now, in the midst of that hurt and that pain, you don't understand it and you don't like it. It does hurt. Dr. Davis, I know you've been itching to chime in. Go ahead and hop in there for us. Our resident P.
It's so much to unpack. Yeah. I mean, of course, I've been a patient as well as on the physician end of it. I've suffered losses myself. And of course, I know how to advocate for myself differently. For me, I made sure that even though it wasn't necessary per my physician, I want a full path report. For me, I need to know exactly what went wrong and sometimes you don't get any answers from that. And it's because a lot of times they'll say, well, we can scrape the placenta, but it doesn't necessarily show because it might be your cells. You can't tell the difference between your cells and the baby cells sometimes, so you can't really tell what's what. But for me, my issue was mostly age. So in those cases, it's usually chromosomal, which you can clearly tell a chromosomal issue if it's mine or somebody else's because the chromosomes are off. So you can always push for testing posts to see what actually went on. Some people don't like to get into that because they don't want you to feel any kind of way about the results, but you're going to feel some kind of way anyway. So I need as much information as I can have. Some people don't want information. They just want to move on and, continue the process. But some people want the information so they can figure out next moves. As far as the next moves go, nobody can tell you what the right next move is, if it's to persist or to say, this ain't for me, go IVF, go adoption. I think in generally as a culture, we don't adopt enough. Because the problem with that is you got to get, everybody has to buy in on it the same way, So I used to have a hang up about interracial adoption, but somebody got to do it. And we don't.
Yeah.
So I think that's one area where we don't push enough to move families in that direction, to explore it at least, because that's definitely an option to go ahead and get started, even if you're still in the process yourself. It doesn't mean that you're no longer going to try yourself, but it allows you to start that avenue instead of sometimes you get to a place where we can't move at all because we're stuck right here. And we can't move forward at all because we're stuck in this process and trying to do it this way, and we are mentally stuck. And that's when you start getting those breakdowns in relationships. So if we can look at all roads of moving forward, and moving forward sometimes along multiple paths at the same time. There's nothing that says you can only go this way or you can only go that way. You can do more than one path at the same time. Earlier in the conversation, we talked about genetic stressors. There is a burgeoning field of study on genetic stress, what I call group PTSD, the African Americans have suffered. And not only just the psychological stressors, but there's some physical changes that I think have taken place, as far as hypertension and other things. That it's kind of like evolution. You know, you live in certain conditions for so long and things start to shift and change. And we are a heterogeneous group, meaning that we are mixed to some degree, but still we tend to marry within most of the time. So any of those genetic variables are going to start to get amplified because we tend to stick within our culture as far as dating pool, especially if you're in Mississippi where the pool is smaller and smaller. You know, it might be some genes getting amplified because, you know, we are closely linked. Well, a lot of us have been in the same place for the full 450 years we've been here. And so there's a lot of things that are going to start to get amplified over generations. And so that's a field of research that has not been tapped into a lot, mostly because it's one of those issues that doesn't affect everybody. And so there are a lot of people who are not interested in pursuing those avenues because, you know, there's no end reward for them to figure it out exactly.
Right.
I do think OBs have had their chain pulled, mostly because of Serena, as far as what happens when Black women speak out postpartum. One of the things I think is affecting us now is, one, we do believe in suffering in silence. We're taught to do that. Shut up, stop crying, stop whining, you know. We are taught to do that from the beginning, but that comes from, again, that history of being told to suffer in silence. And so that's one part of it. I think on the individual level, and now some physicians feel attacked by, you know, the press that it's getting, that there's discrimination in medicine. I had a huge talk about that, and some people felt attacked, like we were calling them personally racist, and like, I'm not racist. No, and it's a kind of a difficult approach to put it on the hands of the physician itself, because they're human like anybody else, and we were all born into this caste system, you know. So it's a matter of whether or not you're racist. If anybody has picked up the book Caste, whether or not you're racist, it's more clear to say how deeply has the caste system you're born in impacted you.
Yeah.
Because we are all impacted by it to some degree. Now, how deeply you let it impact you may sway how much more likely you are to do a racist act. But we're all a part of the same system. So you have more Black women who are working on their feet during pregnancy. You have, I think now for the professional Black woman, we don't want to be a statistic. So we push that stuff off. We push our family till we find, you know, we want a husband, we want this, we want him to be college educated, you want to do it in a certain way, and next thing you know, you're 34 and the clock ticking, and you got to move quick. So whereas white girls are taught to go to college and come out with a husband.
Yep.
And go ahead and start having that babies at 22 and 23. We're trying to make it. We're trying to get a house first. We're trying to do this first. We're trying to do that first. I got to get this paid off. I'm not having no baby with you. You ain't got your life together yet. We don't have the benefit of having parents who supply those things, that first house sometimes, and it's not a culture thing, it's a money thing. We don't have the benefit of having that generational wealth that sets us up to go ahead and use your eggs while they fresh. So it's becoming, if you look around Houston, we basically the bigger cities where everybody moves to use their degrees, ain't nobody got babies. I mean, like there's so many Black women who are engineers, doctors, lawyers, whatever, no kids, or or they gotten to the age where they have to explore some of those other options to make that happen. And then also, finally, I want to say, having children is a very personal decision. I think it's becoming ingrained in us as a culture that it's like, one of those boxes you have to check off for completion. And, you can be a family with just, you and your spouse. And it's not a pity party for you because, half the people that got kids wish you would take them from them for a few hours. So it is okay to decide not to have kids if that's what you want to do. All of that it's a wide range, and it's not one avenue to live life in. You don't have to do it one certain way. But I think that as a race, we are really facing some dinosaur times here because we are not regenerating at a sufficient rate, and it's alarming what's happening. But we are not reproducing at a sufficient rate, and so I'm like, what's going to happen in 300 years?
Wow.
Are we going to be kind of just blending in at that point because we just aren't reproducing at the rate that we need to? And different factors taking all different factors into consideration, but one of those factors though is the development of the professional Black woman, and that's decreasing how many babies we have.
And you know what? You hit on so much, Doc.
I can't hear you, Michelle. Hold on.
You hit on so much, but I need to kind of pause and like put a little skirt on the part of us feeling obligated. Like, I think it has been ingrained in us to believe that the only way you can be a woman is if you have a baby. And I have a problem with that. I love my little people. Please don't get me wrong. I love them. They're some of my favorite humans in the world. I wish they were older because we would be like good girlfriends, right? But there's a lot of things that if I had to choose things differently, I would choose a different path, because I was under the impression that the only way I could be a woman or be considered a certain way, or even with my husband, is if we have kids. And I'm like, they're expensive. Nothing's wrong with that. Again, not taking away from a person's desire to be a mom at all. However, I think we need to stop preaching that mission on everyone. We also need to stop asking people when they're going to have babies. We need to stop asking people when you're going to have another baby, or especially for those who have suffered loss, when are you going to try again? You don't know what I'm doing. Don't do that. Like, we have to get out of people's, vaginas.
Right.
Get out of people's uterus.
I just started telling them, you in my business. Don't do that.
Say it, sis. You in my business. Don't do that. Like, we have to stop, because there's so much healing that can come from just loving on yourself and being a part of yourself. You touched on adoption and the fact that we as Black people, as our culture, we don't traditionally adopt. We don't. I grew up in a household where we did a lot of foster care. I have several adoptive siblings, and that's just how my mother was. Okay. And a lot of that had to do with her suffering from infant and pregnancy loss and her fear that she would not have children. So she was grabbing them up. All the kids that could come, she was taking them all. She's like, give me all the kids. I want them all. And after she started grabbing them all, then she started having them. So now she got all the kids. She's the old lady in the shoe. But that's what makes her happy. People look at us and they're like, oh, you're not going to be like your mama? No. I'm not going to do that. I'm good. I'm a teacher. I've got hundreds of kids. So we have to start normalizing people not falling into that same realm. Like, we have to stop doing that. Then I want to chime in with our doula too, to talk about, we need to also normalize birth experiences that are more natural for us. Because when I think about some of the things that we experience, when I think about having to be rushed in to have a C-section for my oldest daughter because she was turning blue, when I probably just needed to stand up and squat, and she might have come out, like all these different things are going on. And it's like, the more you know. So we're finally in a place, because of the internet and being able to truly be educated. We have people like Stephanie Dort Brown, who's a licensed nurse, who's got that degree under her belt, who's got the experiences, but is also a trained nurse because she wants to be able to share that. Stephanie, would you give us a little bit of insight?
Well, right now I am a certified birth and postpartum doula, which is very necessary right now, especially in our community, because we do need that person that comes out and advocate for the mother. Because sometimes you go in and you think you know, but you don't really know whatever the doctor says. Not, I'm not knocking the credit from the doctor, but sometimes they don't know. So it's like our job to pretty much help the mother, research and find out, because your body is made to have a baby. So some people, your body's made to have a baby. So if you're having complications and stuff, it's something that's, imbalanced, or something that you can do to fix it. So it's our job as a doula to help. And postpartum is even worse, because after you have that baby, you feel like you can do it. And a lot of people don't even ask for help when they're battling they battle a lot of stuff after babies, and you don't even know you're going through it. Because me, as a nurse working in labor and delivery, I suffered postpartum depression, but I didn't think that I was going through that, because I'm like, no, I don't want to. The book says you want to harm or you want to kill. I'm like, I'm not having those thoughts, so I'm not going through postpartum. But in reality, postpartum hits everybody differently.
And the same black attachment to it that Black people don't get postpartum. We don't get that.
Everybody get postpartum.
Exactly. And people, what I think we often miss is that in experiencing postpartum, like, everybody doesn't want to inflict harm. Sometimes it's that depression that overtakes you, or that feeling of you can't quite do enough for your child, or don't have postpartum and then suffer with not being able to lactate, or things like that, or your milk not producing. Like, all of those things affect you. And I think people really miss those parts when we think about, our NICU moms. Toya and I were talking about, here you are, you're having to try to produce that milk when we know naturally your body produces it when it hears the baby or when it's near you. And so you're fighting a whole nother separate set of battles, and people aren't even paying attention to that. And we have to be able to have those conversations. Dr. Quia, can you talk a little bit about like the importance, the importance of us having that mental space to be able to really communicate in the grief aspect, in the postpartum aspect, and in the aspect of I don't want to say validating womanhood, because we're all women, but why is it that culturally we feel like we have to be validated in that space? And why do we do that to others by asking those really, truly invasive questions?
So I think I either read it somewhere or I saw a meme that said that a lot of times African-American women don't know that they are experiencing anxiety and depression because they see it as failure. They automatically label themselves as I am failing, instead of acknowledging the true emotional and mental components that are actually occurring within. And as you guys, a lot of you all have talked about the superwoman complex of African-American women are tough, or whether it's mentally or physically. And so one doesn't want to address what one may consider weak feelings, and having anxiety, having depression, having postpartum or PTSD, whatever the disorder, or even may not even be on the level of a disorder, but the mental issue may be. We don't want to own that, because that's not what a Black woman looks like, right? Or that's not what a Black woman owns to be her. So it's therefore, as I think someone else, you guys said a lot of stuff that I was like, yeah, where you said that you suffer internally. And that's when it becomes where you internalize it, suffering alone and causing more stress on the body. Because as we know, the mental is definitely connected to the physical. And so it just continues to be a detrimental cycle.
Right.
So we have to normalize, even starting with the smaller components of just starting out with having anxiety, or as it matriculates on to postpartum or what or other serious mental issues. So like you stated, it has to be normalized.
Yeah.
And I forgot, what else did you ask me? I'm sorry.
I asked you how we can get in this space where people basically get out of business.
Get out your I don't know if that would ever happen, and especially in our culture, as we have been brought up. Although we've been brought up to keep your dirty laundry in your house, right? Yeah. But we also have been brought up to where we are to be very outspoken. We are to be bold in our speech, which is great when used correctly, right? Right. So, therefore, people feel like they are entitled. And then it's social media causes everybody to feel like they're entitled to ask or say or do or whatever they want to do. That has added a major component because I can do it behind a keyboard.
Right.
And I don't actually get to say it to your face because I may not would have asked you that. And then you have to, like, I think about me as Dr. Davis was talking about professional Black women that went on, got the house, got the degrees. When I'm 39, I haven't thought about the kids or the husband. So here I am, one of those statistics that you're talking about. So this doesn't look right to African-American grandmothers, right?
Right.
Like, what are you
doing right now?
Grandma, what are you doing right now? Right. I have a cat. My grandma said that's the wrong kind of baby.
It take a Black grandma to try to come at you sideways in the sweetest way possible. Now you got the wrong kind of baby, sugar.
So it's like we have been conditioned to think that, as you guys stated, that those are the stages that we are to go in, like marriage, kids, and that's pretty much it. That's all they're really looking at. So it was even a thing about when I was in school for so long. It was like, you just love school. You a lifelong student. Yeah, I really am. Like, honestly, I am. And I don't think that's a problem.
We got everything though, Queen. Like, our culture will make a thing out of anything.
Right.
We have to, like, part of it's funny. I'm not gonna lie. Like, a lot of it is humorous. Right. But a lot of times we use that humor just to be able to function. Right. That humor is a what is it? A cloak of
a mechanism.
Exactly. It's a way we cope with these things. But I look at it and I think about it because my mom was a older mom, meaning that she started late. I am proof that you can have babies after 40. I am her proof. And they can be healthy. I'm proof that you can have babies after suffering loss and they can be healthy. So I am a living testament of a rainbow. All right. So many children are. And I thank God for my mom not giving up because I feel like the world deserves me. And I deserve to be here. Right. So I know it hurt her to lose the ones that she lost, right? Because her mind, her idea was she's going to have 10, 11 kids like her mama. That's what she wanted. And more power to her. But I look at it and I'm like, that's beautiful. I'm proud of her for being persistent. But I also talk to her and I'd be like, you know what? I'm glad to be here. But at the same time, if you had stopped, you would have just kept the world from having somebody awesome. But you still would have been a dynamic woman. It wouldn't have changed the fabric of who you are. And I think we have to empower our sisters. We have to empower one another to know that, this is not the end of your journey, right?
We have to start internally first. Like, you have to know who you are outside of external factors. Like, none of the labels that anyone gives you or the diagrams of how a woman and what she's to have, how it is to go. should ever be your description unless you want it to be.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
think
like
a lot of times
replication.
when people say things, we do internalize it and we don't say things back because, we don't want to be rude or, well, they didn't mean it that way. Meanwhile, like, I'm suffering while you just said this rude thing to me,
Right.
And so, like, respectfully, I have learned that there's a way to address, everything. And if I haven't learned anything else over the past 5 years, is to be confident in who I am and to speak my mind. I have my bad days. Whatever the case may be, like, it's me. This is me. This is what you're going to get. If you get the tears, you get it. If you get the laughs, you get it. If you get the twerking, you get it. Like, I feel like, my mom always says, I've raised, all my kids. I got the right to say and do what I want. Sometimes I joke with her. I say, Mom, I got the right to say and do what I want too, but like at the end of the day, it does. You do have to be confident, within yourself. And sometimes that comes with respectfully checking people.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember when we got pregnant with our baby girl, Journey, and we hesitated about making an announcement. And after we got, about 18 weeks, we decided we would. And they didn't mean any harm. Well, I don't know what they meant. Let me not say that. But anyway, they said, oh, it was, I was wondering when they were going to have a baby. It's about time, Joey had another baby. Because this was like, I guess someone that knew him, not knew me. So then Keisha's first thought was, let me write her, And I'm like, how you going to tell me when it's, when it's time for me to have another baby? Like, you do realize we suffered a traumatic loss. Like, it's not just that we had, a kid and you're just waiting and, when they're going to have another child. Not that that's any of your business anyway. But, like, how you just going to tell me that it's time for me to have another baby? Like, this is my body.
Right.
So you stay over there. You have your kids. You do what you do. And then you do, you let me do mine. Do me. And I don't know. You try to be nice, but then, like I said, sometimes it crosses that line, and you can respectfully address things.
Right.
That doesn't make us, bad people. A lot of times I'm like, well, I don't want to say that. That's, that's kind of rude, especially if it's to somebody that I feel like, they may be older than me, or I may not say that. But sometimes it is okay to let people know, this is my life.
I think for
to live it, so it's okay. It's okay.
I think for me in my journey, I think that I had to kind of start setting some boundaries with people. I think sometimes people can mean well, and they're coming from a place of love and concern, but their delivery sucks.
Yeah.
And I
don't even know.
I had to set some boundaries with, like, even with my mom. I love her to death, but I think on some level she lacks some emotional intelligence when it comes to what I'm going through. You've never experienced it.
Yeah.
And sometimes her idea was you pray about it. You take it to God and you leave it with God.
I wish y'all
That's great and all. I love God. I have a relationship with God, but me and God ain't on speaking terms right now, especially when I was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I was extremely angry. I was resentful and I was bitter. And trigger words like, God never put more on you than you can bear. That was a real quick way for me to almost hurt your feelings. I'm not in the mood for that, or, I think people mean well, but it's just, that's just not the time or the place, or you wouldn't want your baby to have been born with disabilities or some type of medical issue. No one wants that, but it still doesn't negate the fact of what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're trying to minimize my hurt. And that's where I get frustrated and angry at. So I had to get to a point where I just can't share everything with my mother. I love her to death, but I just can't go certain areas in my life with her because I just don't think she understands. And that's okay. But to protect my peace and to protect my sanity, I have to set some limits and some boundaries with certain people, because I know they're just gonna say something off the top of their head. And nowadays my patience is thin. I don't have a lot of tolerance for nonsense. So, you know, it's a process.
And I don't think people, I agree with you. I think people mean well and they don't know what to say, because oftentimes, like when I have people that experience loss in my life, my first thing to say is like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm thinking like, yes, you do. You know, you just be there. You don't have to say or do anything specifically. And a lot of people, they try to put themselves in your shoes. You know, they'll say, well, I can't imagine. And I tell them, like, don't try to, because I wouldn't want anyone to ever experience this, you know, or even feel that pain. So, you know, like you said, people mean well. They just, a lot of times they don't know what to say. And if we don't create those boundaries, then we will be in our grief for a lot longer, you know, because we take on the things that they say and we internalize the things that they say instead of addressing it at that moment. So I commend you for being able to. I'm still working on my boundaries. I'm still working on that.
I think we have to really like get to this place where it's big about respect. So we have to respect people and understand that it's just not your business. We have to. A problem I have with our country is that so many decisions are being made about women's bodies without women being at the forefront of the discussion. And even as a woman, I don't feel comfortable making a decision for your body. My decisions should be my decisions and your decisions should be your decisions. And for me, it's really hard to see people and interact with people. And Lo, you know, I get the question all the time. So when y'all gonna have a boy? So when, and I joke with Lo about her having another child for Noah, but I was like, but at the same time, Noah got 3 sisters over here. He can come hang with the glitter gang anytime he wants to. We will do whatever he wants to do, right? So the girls have a brother. He has a set of sisters. So, but at the same time, I can talk with her because I know her story and she knows I'm not coming and being like on uterus watch 2021. We have to stop like doing that. And then when we see people who, another issue I've seen is that when people have suffered loss and they keep trying and they want to enjoy the joy of when they are successful and get pregnant and then happen to lose a baby again, people are like, well, you know, you really shouldn't be sharing because first of all, you're not going to tell me how to share my joy. Stop that. Stop politicking what people are experiencing. Like, it's so not fair. You don't understand that person's journey, and every person should be able to relish in the joy of whatever they're experiencing. Like, we have to stop dictating to other people what they get to be joyful about or how they get to process grief or how long you can grieve. Toy, when you and I talk, we talked, I said, baby, you can grieve as long as you want to, however you want to.
Right.
This is your journey. We don't get to determine how you do that. Our job as your friends, as your sisters, are to support you in that journey, not to say, okay, that's enough now.
Right.
I have a parent who'll be like, okay, you done cried enough now. It's over. And I'm like, whoa, we're not on tear monitoring over here. You don't get to tell me how many tears I get to dedicate to this. I'm gonna dedicate as many as I want. I'm gonna cry and I'm gonna hustle and do what I need to do. So I can be a crybaby and a boss.
Right.
I can be emotional and strong. Like, I can be all those things. And I think sometimes we get boxed in as women to what we can experience, and that's not fair. So we have to really have those conversations more often. And I'm so glad that you all came on and we're willing to have a open conversation. The goal of this conversation is not to bring closure. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to say, okay, well, when we leave here today, we are done with this. We're not talking about. No, it's to open up a floodgate to have more conversations. There are so many women that have been on this live who've experienced infant loss or experienced pregnancy loss. And they need to know that there are people out there praying with them and for them that they can reach out to and say, hey, I'm having a rough time. I'm missing my baby, or I really want to try again, but I'm afraid, or my husband said he's tired of this and I don't know what to do. Because we've got spouses in this situation too. We have to be able to have those conversations. And a big one, we have to be able to have those conversations about advocacy, about the statistics, about the mental health effects, about the availability of doulas, about even your legal rights when it comes to these things. Every one of these things have to be tapped into. And that's why it's so important to have a tribe of dope Black women to be able to come together and talk about these kinds of things. Lo, you hadn't had a chance to really chime in. You got something you want to say, love?
Yes, actually, I do. Well, I don't even know if we have time.
We
'cause I
got
know we
time,
gotta get off in a
baby.
few
We
minutes.
always got time. We're
Okay,
reclaiming our time.
I'm gonna try to sum my story up, because my story is it's all over the place, but it's a testimony. Okay, so
No, you're good, sis.
am I breaking up? Okay, so in 2008, my endocrinologist, after checking my levels, she told me that I wasn't going to be able to have kids. So let me just give you a little backstory. Around this time, me and my husband had been married now around that time for like 4 years. We was living in New Jersey, and I was having issues with my thyroids a lot. So I went to her. She told me that it doesn't look like you'll be able to have kids. So I was like, I was sad, but I was like, okay, it is what it is. So right after that, way before that, before my husband and I got married, he went to church, and a prophet prophesied over him and told him that he was like, before we got married, the prophet said, is your wife here, or are you married? And he was like, no. He's like, are you about to be married? And he was like, yes, I'm about to be married. And he said, okay, I need you to send her a message. I want you to let her know that she's going to have a healthy baby boy, and don't worry. So he was like, okay. And at this time we were not married. So we was about to be married probably within the next 2 years, but we was just engaged. We wasn't married yet. So fast forward back to the endocrinologist. The endocrinologist told me I wasn't going to be able to have kids. So I was sad for a while. We got over it, and I was like, that's kind of weird, but okay, whatever. So fast forward to 2011, we moved to New Jersey, and we was like, you know what? We're going to try anyway. So we tried, and I ended up getting pregnant in 2011. We was living in Alabama. Got in Alabama, found out I was pregnant, went to my first doctor's appointment. My doctor confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. Weeks passed, went to my next appointment, and I found out that we were going to have a baby girl. So I'm looking at my husband, because we was living on this, your baby was going to be a healthy baby boy, and don't worry. So I was like, well, Steve, look, your prophet wrong. I'm having a girl. He told me I was going to have a boy, and I'm having a girl. So we going back and forth. He was like, whatever. I was like, no, he was wrong. He told me I was going to have a boy, and I'm having a girl. So he was like, whatever, Lo. So time went by, and I was like about 6 months. I went to my next doctor's appointment for a checkup, and we went inside, my husband and I, because my husband was going to all my doctor's appointment with me. And we went inside, and the doctor put the machine on your stomach where you can hear the baby heartbeat. So when she put the machine on my stomach, she was kind of looking puzzled, and we was looking at her like, uh-oh, that's not like Dr. Roberts. So she was just looking at us. She was looking, and she was like listening, and she was turning her little monitor thing up, and we just knew something was wrong. So she looked at us, and she was like, you know what, guys, I don't hear a heartbeat. So my heart instantly dropped. I was devastated. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna send you down to get an ultrasound to confirm everything. So he's like, okay. So she gave us time in the room. I was in the room crying. I broke down, and it was a mess. So we went to get ultrasound, and sure enough, they confirmed that I had miscarried. So we went back upstairs to my doctor. The doctor was like, do you guys want to deliver the baby today, or you want to come back tomorrow, later on this week? I was like, absolutely not. I'm not coming back. I need to get this out today. I cannot go home with a deceased baby in my stomach. So she was like, okay, no problem. So she set me up, put me in the room, put an IV in and everything. She was like, okay, so chances are you'll probably deliver tomorrow instead of tonight. So I said, okay, no problem. So late that night, I was in my bed, and it was like 1 light over my head. It was like a surreal situation. Now I was laying in my bed and there was this light over my bed and the room was really, really dark and dim. And I looked down and it was weird because I wear contacts and glasses. And this particular night I did not have on my glasses. I took out my contacts, but I didn't have on my glasses, so I couldn't really see anything. But this particular night I pulled up the cover. I felt it was just something feeling funny in between my legs. So I moved the cover and I looked down and I saw this like really, really pink spot. Because the doctor had already told me that I was going to have to wait for the baby to come out. So excuse me if I don't say the correct terms for this, guys, for the doctors on here, but I'm just trying to explain the story. So the doctor had told me that well, I looked up under my cover and I was like, that looked weird. And then when I moved it more, I saw like these fingers between my leg like this. Like I saw some fingernails. So I was like, oh my God, I think that's the baby. So I called the nurses to come in. I was like, I think the baby has come out. And she was like, oh no, it's coming out tomorrow. She's gonna come out tomorrow. I said, no, ma'am, I think the baby is here. So she pulled the covers out and she was like, oh my God, you're right. Let me hurry up and go get the doctor. So the doctor came in and the baby had came out and she delivered the baby. And I saw them clean the baby and put her on a nice, beautiful dress. And they was like, Miss Messel, would you like to hold a baby? I said, no. And they was like, you sure you don't want to hold a baby? I was like, nope. And I felt like I couldn't hold her because I knew had I did, like it wouldn't have been no good for me. It wouldn't have been any good. So I said, I know myself. So maybe later when I calm down and things get better, I'll be able to hold her. So lo and behold, they asked me again. They was like, do you want to hold the baby? I was like, I don't want to hold her. But my husband decided he wanted to hold her, but they did it in a separate room. So they told us, they came back in our room. They was like, Miss Melson, because you had a stillborn, you have to have a funeral for the state of Alabama. And I was like, what? They was like, you have to have a funeral. So I was like, okay, whatever. So my mom was coming in. My mom rushed in town. She drove down from Florida, her, my brothers, and my husband. They made the funeral arrangements. I wanted no part of it. I was just that distraught. And I looked at my mom. I said, Mom, will I be a bad mom if I don't attend the funeral? And she was like, no, that's your choice. That's your decision. Whatever you want, that's what we're going to do. If you feel like you can't handle it, you feel like you can't do it, that's your decision. So I did not attend my daughter's funeral. They had a little small graveside funeral for it. It wasn't anything big. I did not go, but they took pictures. And I was able to look at those pictures maybe 3 years later. Fast forward. I'm going to try to sum this up. After that was over or whatever, 2 years later came and we decided to try again. So I got pregnant again. And after they confirmed that I was pregnant, I went to go see if we went to go check the sex of the baby. Check the sex of the baby. They told me it told us it was going to be a baby boy. So I said, maybe his prophet was right. So I was like, okay. So after they told us it was going to be a baby boy, at that time we had to relocate because my husband John relocated him down to Florida. So in the middle of my 7-month pregnancy, we was moving, my husband and I. So they told us in Alabama, because I was high risk, that I had to be on bed rest the whole entire pregnancy. They didn't want me moving. They didn't want me cooking. They barely wanted me taking the shower. It was like, you're going to have to take a bath with baby wipes. I say, absolutely not. So it was just that serious. It was like, you're going to have to take a bath with baby wipes. I'm like, no, I'm a Black woman. I don't do that. But anyway, so they told me they're going to give me a cerclage because they wanted to sew the cervix back up where the baby, if you're high risk, you got to have these cerclages or whatever so the baby can't come out or whatever on its own. So after the bed rest, I ended up going to the doctor because I wasn't feeling good. I think my blood pressure I was just feeling sick. Went to the doctor for a random checkup. They said, we need to admit you. It's not looking good for you. So that night I had to have a emergency C-section at 7 months. They told me that The baby wasn't moving inside because they did this certain test where they beat on these little machines, and if the baby not alert or moving to it, something wasn't right. I don't know. So they decided to do an emergency C-section. Did the C-section, delivered the baby, and they told me, okay, the baby may come out via C-section. Don't be alarmed if he don't cry. He may have breathing problems. He may have all types of problems, but don't be alarmed. We're gonna work on him and put him in a NICU. The baby was born 3 pounds, 3 ounces. He came out the womb crying. He was breathing on his own. He did not need a machine, and everything was perfect. I just want to encourage you ladies and say that God's timing is perfect. I don't care how long that timing will be. It's not our timing. We may want to rush. We may want to speed things up the process, or we have people in this world trying to intimidate us with our biological clocks and all that foolishness. But at the end of the day, God's timing is perfect. Yes, I had issues. I was exposed to MRSA. I had all types of stuff going on with me. It was just crazy. But
Alabama, sis. I'm gonna just say that.
Huh?
I think it was Alabama.
Yeah, it was Alabama. That's why I love that state. And you know what? I was kind of wondering I don't know what it was, because when I moved back to Florida, and these were not white or Caucasian doctors, and they treated me so bad. And they were Black women. And the one that treated me very well was the one that ended up delivering my child, because the 2 Black women did not want to deliver my child. So it was this lady,
right?
She was an Indian, and
This was in Alabama.
This was well, the drummer was in Florida.
Okay.
But the first doctor in Alabama, she was amazing.
Okay.
So yeah, but that's my story. It was a journey. I'm so grateful. We call our story Losing Nia, Finding Noah. Because God has really blessed us. I'm not gonna lie, I was questioning God. I was mad because I did everything in order. How he wanted the marriage, the babies. I did everything in his order. You know what I'm saying? And I still was like, okay, God, so why I gotta go through all this? And I did everything you told me to do. But God's like, you know what? You who are you? You ain't no better than nobody else. Just because you did what I needed you to do, but at the end of the day, I'm using you to share your story as well. I need you to go through this so you can help and encourage somebody as well. So I just want everybody to be encouraged who have suffered, who is going through. God's timing is perfect. His will is not our will. You know, again, we may question things, we may worry about things, but we got to get to the point where we don't let this stuff that's going on around us stress us. Yeah, we have to pray about things at the same time, because God does give us our heart's desire. Yeah. It kind of makes sure we remember that our heart's desire is His perfect will. So always remember that and keep that in your back pocket, ladies, that God's will is His perfect will. It's perfect. Like, I just don't know how else to explain it, because we all have gone through different things. We all have suffered loss. We all have been through it all. And after I had my daughter and lost her, I said I was like, no, I'm not doing this again. I'm not. And even now with Noah, I don't know what the future holds, but I tell everybody, if they ask me, like, Lo, will you have any more kids? No, not having any more, because of that journey I went through. I remember everything. I'll never forget it. I was there. It was scary. It was, I don't know how to explain it, but I tried to explain it as best as I could tonight. But you had to be there in order to really understand it. But just know that I am praying for you ladies. I heard everybody's story tonight, and just be encouraged. Don't give up. Man might say one thing. The doctors told me I couldn't have kids. I got a whole son, 6 years old.
Same.
No health issues, no problems, no nothing. So, and 3 pounds, 3 ounces. So, and that's it.
Yeah. I can remember Tamika and I talking, and me sharing with her what the doctor said about me not ever having children because of my uterus and all this stuff. And when I called Tamika and told her I was pregnant, she was like, what? I said, right? Like, what's going on over here? She said, well, that's why we don't need to be listening to them doctors, because it's God's way. God got the final say. So I was like, you're right, friend. You're right.
Yeah.
We're gonna walk in that. Quia's shirt says, prayer is a weapon, therapy is a strategy.
Yep.
That is powerful.
That's amazing.
Like, we have to build up our toolbox. We have to build up our toolbox so that we could respectfully let people know to get out of our business.
Mm-hmm.
We have to build up our toolbox to tell our parents or our loved ones that, hey, in God's timing, not yours, not anybody else, and this is my journey. We have to step up and be comfortable to say, you know what, doctor, I'm not doing it your way. I got my doula over here, and we're going to walk through this way in the most natural, healthy way possible. We have to fight against systemic racism, like Dr. Burst said, and make sure that we address those generational things that have happened, like Dr. Davis said.
Yep.
We got to make sure, like Quia said, to address the mental health and wellness that goes and is attached with all that, and check the pressures that we're putting on ourselves sometimes to reach a goal that may not be the goal that we're really wanting to have. So a lot of self-assessment, a lot of reflection. Ladies, you all have done my heart a full joy tonight. I know there were people trying to get into the stream. I'm sorry if you didn't get a chance to make it in, but we thank you. Thank you to all of our guests tonight, to all of our panel of dope Black women. You all are amazing. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night, world, from a tribe of dope Black women. We will see y'all the next go round. Be sure to check us out next Wednesday when we talk to our breast cancer survivors across generations. Please come back and join that conversation as a physician comes in to help us unpack why we need to have these conversations early on to talk about early detection among African American women. I'm so grateful for your attention tonight. I love you, but God loves you more, and I hope you have a blessed night. Y'all be good.
Good night.
Good night.